Welcome to the Three Martini Lunch. Grab a stool next to Greg Columbus of Radio America and Jim Garrity of National Review. Three martinis coming up.
Hey, remember Monday when we had 3 good martinis? That was great. That was a great day. We didn't have any yesterday, and we really don't have any today. But as Jim so helpfully pointed out, one of them has the potential to get better. Also, due to an internet outage, Jim Garrity is in studio today with me, but we're also just, because of the signal issue with all we have to meet in person now, or else our confidential conversations could get leaked to the Atlantic. But Jim, it's good to see you in person.
Greg, it's great to be with you and with our special guest. Oh, wait, we don't have a guest. It just when I'm in studio, usually we've got Sununu or Perino or somebody, but yeah. Someday soon. We'll get back to that.
Yes, exactly right. All right, well, let's get to issue number 1. And we talked about it to some extent yesterday with the special election in Florida's 6th congressional district being closer than Republicans would certainly like. And there are multiple reasons for why it's not. First of all, there's a poll from St. Pete polls that shows that it's not just Republican apathy going on there. It's that the Republican in that race is only up by 4 points, even when people are just polled about it, much less showing up. And in terms of those who have already voted, the Democrat leads by 8 points right now. In addition to that, we got a helpful note from a listener yesterday pointing out that it's not just apathy, it's Randy Fine. Randy Fine has not been popular, especially as of late. He's a state senator who defied Governor DeSantis over immigration legislation designed to help facilitate the Trump administration's policies. DeSantis had a very specific idea of how that should go. Fine also was the first Florida lawmaker in 2024 to flip his endorsement from initially DeSantis to Trump. So there is some bad blood there. But DeSantis publicly saying in the last few days that this is going to be closer than it should be. And it's not because people are souring on Trump. It's because the candidate's not that great. He says, regardless of the outcome, it's going to be a way underperformance from what I won that district by in 2022 and what the president won it by in November. They're going to try to lay that at the feet of President Trump. That is not a reflection of President Trump. It's a reflection of a specific candidate running in that race. So there might be some personal bad blood, but the numbers certainly seem to bear that out. Jim, you devote the morning jolt to other races that Republicans should be doing better in, but at this point are not. Thankfully, Florida 1 seems to be very safe at this point for Republicans, the 1st congressional district. Is it?
There's safe, and then there's, looking okay, but nowhere near where you'd expect in normal circumstances, which is how I'd characterize, Florida's first. We actually had a couple resolved earlier in the week in Pennsylvania. One state Senate race, one state representative race. State representative race, Republicans lost both, which is problem number 1. In the state representative race, the control of the state house came down to that one. And whether or not, maybe it was never the perfect district for Republicans. Would have been nice to pick that one off and flip control of the state house. Republicans still have control of the state Senate. What's really kind of worrisome about this one is that Trump won this state Senate district by 15 points in 2024. It's had a Republican district for a really long time. I went back and I checked. 2022, there was no Democratic candidate. This guy ran unopposed 4 years ago. 4 years before that, the incumbent was running and he won 66% of the vote. This is pretty darn Republican territory, and the Democrat managed to win by a couple hundred votes. Now look, special elections are weird. You have much lower turnout. People aren't paying attention, much less advertising. Weird things can happen, as we discussed earlier in this week. But if you're Republicans, you would like to get control of the state house, and you really don't want to lose ones that seem like safe. Maybe you come back in November of 2026 and win this seat back, but it just feels like, how did that happen? How were you, did something like that slip through your fingers? And those are the races that are done. On April 1st, yes, get your April Fool's Day jokes out of the way. We have the 2 House districts. We have the Wisconsin State Supreme Court race. Wisconsin State Supreme Court race, everybody's dumping tons of money into it. Elon Musk, liberal groups. Turnout is up dramatically than 4 years ago, but obviously the stakes are very high. And I think that, so you expect turnout to be really high. Wisconsin does not break down the early vote by party registration. So we don't know, how these people voted. But Milwaukee County voters are generally Democratic. Dane County voters are generally Democratic. And there are a bunch of other ones you just kind of know based on the history. Turnout in the Democratic counties is really high. There are other Republican counties where it's also gone up, but remember, there's fewer people in those counties. So I feel like that one's a jump ball. could go either way. Obviously, kind of very deep, lots of ramifications for state laws in Wisconsin for the years to come. It's not a lock. It's not lost, but that one just looks very shaky. And getting back down to these, Florida House districts. Yeah. One is the first district. It's Gates's district. It's the Panhandle. The Republican candidate, who's currently the state's chief financial officer, Jimmy Petronas, he'll probably win, but he's going to have to work for it. And, Matt Gaetz usually wins the seat by 66% to 34%. It's an R plus 19 in the Cook partisan voting. This is not an area where Democrats should have any kind of shot. And right now it looks like they're way ahead in fundraising. The Democratic, grassroots are just mad as hell and are throwing money at any candidate running in a special election. And again, it's a similar story for Waltz's seat in Daytona Beach. Republicans will probably win, but this is, again, Waltz used to win with like 66% of the vote. This one, I think, scores R plus 14. This is not supposed to be the kind of place you're nervous. I want to give a shout out to Red State's Terry Christoph, who looked at the numbers a couple of days ago and just noticed the early voting numbers by party registration were not looking good. I went them, updated them. Right now, as of this morning, there were 17,977 registered Republicans who voted, 17,471 registered Democrats. So the Republicans ahead, but just barely. Now, not every registered Republican is going to vote for the Republican candidate. Not every registered Democrat is going to vote for the Democratic candidate, but generally they are. So again, I think the mood amongst Republicans in Washington is, yeah, we'll probably hang on to these seats, but these are not seats we should ever be needing to worry about. So, and I've had readers say, but Jim, Trump's approval rating is really high and people say the country's on the right. That's great. But if your people don't show up to vote in a special election, that still causes you headaches. And I think it kind of makes you wonder, how enthused are Republicans right now? And for that matter, even if nationally people are really meh on the Democrats right now, if the Democrat grassroots are fired up, they can put states in play that otherwise would not be.
And even in lopsided districts like this, as you said. And so, Randy Fine in Florida 6 might get over the line. He seems to have a lot of baggage even in his own party, kind of fractured over his candidacy at this point. Big fan of Ron DeSantis, but I'm not sure the best thing to do right before this closer than expected race to go out as, well, our candidate's really not that great. So maybe save that for afterwards. But I
wonder how he feels about the gubernatorial primary. There's any candidate named DeSantis that might turn his head. So,
I think he'll be a little less coy, even more less coy about that if she gets into the race, which she probably will. But not looking great. So if for some reason the Democrats can pick off that seat with the narrow majority the Republicans already have in the House, that's going to be not fun to deal with. And I think Wisconsin's going to be the headliner from the voting next week. And the big issue there, though, is that Tony Evers, the Democratic governor, is in a big fight with the Republican legislature about the next congressional map. And they think the Supreme Court and this seat is going to swing which map they end up going with. And the one Evers wants would basically kill two Republican-held seats the way it would be redrawn. So that's a big deal heading into potentially 2026 here. All right. Well, better than that, of course, is Fast Growing Trees. Fast Growing Trees is the biggest online nursery in the United States with thousands of different plants and more than 2 million happy customers. Fast Growing Trees offers a wide selection of plants from fruit and privacy trees to shrubs, all tailored to your climate and your space.
And you don't need to have a yard or a lot of space. You can grow lemon, avocado, olive, or fig trees inside your home on top of the wide variety of houseplants that are available. The experts at Fast Growing Trees curate thousands of plants so that you can find the perfect fit for your specific climate, location, and needs. No more driving around to nurseries or big garden centers. Fast Growing Trees makes it easy to order online, and your plants are delivered to your door in just a few days.
And we have had friends who have loved what they've gotten from Fast Growing Trees. There have been a couple of occasions where the plant didn't arrive in the greatest of shape, but they have their Alive and Thrive guarantee. And our friends have said it could not have been easier. They had no problems exchanging the plant for a perfectly vibrant and healthy one. But again, that's a very rare situation. But in the case that something goes slightly wrong, they will make it right away. This spring, get up to 50% off select plants at fastgrowingtrees.com/martini. Plus, use the code Martini at checkout for an extra 15% off your first purchase. Visit fastgrowingtrees.com/martini and use the code Martini. Now's the perfect time to plant. Offer valid for a limited time. Terms apply. fastgrowingtrees.com/martini. All right, Jim, another follow-up from yesterday. This doesn't happen too often, but we've got more news as it relates to the Atlantic and Signal and so forth. We now have the actual posts from Pete Hegseth, the defense secretary, that Jeffrey Goldberg did not initially publish because he thought they were too sensitive and classified information. And so now we know what they are. It says, team update, time now, 11:44 Eastern time. Weather is favorable, just confirmed with CENTCOM. We are a go for mission launch. At 12:15 Eastern, F-18s launch, first strike package. 13:45, trigger-based F-18 first strike, window starts. Target terrorist is at his known location, so should be on time. Also, strike drones launch, MQ-9s. 14:10, more F-18s launch, second strike package. 14:15, strike drones on target. This is when the first bombs will definitely drop, pending earlier trigger-based targets. And at 15:36, F-18 second strike starts. Also, first sea-based Tomahawks launched. More to follow per the timeline. We are currently clean on OPSEC. Godspeed to our warriors. J.D. Vance then says, I will say a prayer for victory. And so you had all these intel hearings going on yesterday, particularly on the Senate side. I think there are more that the folks are dealing with today. A lot of lawmakers obviously grilling the Trump National Security Team about being on Signal. John Ratcliffe, the CIA director, said it was put on his device and told to use mainly to schedule things, not necessarily to communicate stuff like this. But the White House does have a response to this today, and it comes to us from Mike Waltz on his Twitter account that says, no locations, no sources and methods, no war plans. Foreign partners had already been notified that strikes were imminent. Bottom line, President Trump is protecting America and our interests. Jim, what more clarity do we have from yesterday?
I just want to point out, Greg, we just had recently a declassification of documents related to the assassination of John F. Kennedy that were older than you and me and had been classified for the better part of the decades. But here's when we hit the Houthis is not classified, at least according to Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard. Greg, I think we have for years, we've written about the argument that the U.S. government has a problem with overclassification, that things that are designated classified that really don't need to be classified and that they stay designated classified long after there's any good reason to withhold them from the public. Greg, I think we've stumbled across the first underclassification problem of this government, where the idea of when we're hitting an enemy ahead of time and what weapons will be used and the timing of the attacks, that's not secret. Apparently that's hunky-dory, and you can just talk about that anywhere. The other thing, and I've done, in addition to this podcast, I've done other ones, and I keep seeing people saying, well, look, Signal is okay for U.S. government officials to use. The distinction you just made a moment ago is important. If you need to use Signal to say, hey, let's push back the meeting until 10:30, that stuff is fine, right? No, there's no advantage to the enemy of that kind of information. Here's when we hit our enemies does seem like the kind of information you would not want to have, whether or not it's technically classified. That stuff seems secret. That stuff seems sensitive, right? That doesn't, you would not go in front of a microphone and blurt it out at the podium at the Pentagon before, because there's always a chance that the guys, they don't say the name of which terrorist leader in that country was it, but there's a reference to he is in the country, and they later say he was in his house with his girlfriend. I suspect that information got out there. The terrorist leader of the Houthis was, oh, they're talking about me, right? Generally you figure these people can figure this kind of stuff out. I've seen the argument, people would be able to figure out they'd be using F-18s and stuff like that. I get that. It still isn't a good idea for the entire, national security portion of the president's cabinet to be talking about this stuff on Signal. And, the fact that this stuff is okay for talking about non-sensitive stuff doesn't mean it's okay to talk about on this sensitive stuff. Signal, as a friend of mine put it, made a very good point. Signal for you, well, I was going to say you and me, maybe not for me, but for the average person, Signal is fine. Right, that you're not going to be talking about stuff that's super duper sensitive. We're not likely targets for foreign intelligence services. Considering where I travel, you never know. And from what it's known, I'm told that the Chinese and Russians have files on me. Nothing fancy, just we don't like this journalist. Don't talk to him. Don't cooperate with him. That's still more than I'd like them to have.
They could figure that out just by subscribing.
Right? Yeah, that's why they're in the intelligence business, Greg. But if you are the national security advisor, if you are the, director of national intelligence, if you are the director of the CIA, your phone is going to be targeted by the opposition. And, it just seems like a bizarre, careless mistake. You shouldn't be talking about this stuff on Signal. And, they have to know that they are like the number one target of foreign intelligence. And so it's just utterly bizarre. The assertion that, none of this is classified. My colleague and our occasional guest host, Andy McCarthy, wrote yesterday, he can't get his head around that. Like, how could this stuff not be classified? No one's going to get fired over this. And I didn't like Waltz's tweet. He was on Laura Ingram's program last night, and he basically said, yeah, I'm the one who set it up. I'm the one who put Goldberg's name on the chat. I don't know how that he said it got sucked in there, which kind of made it sound like Goldberg had somehow hacked his way in to this or something. No, there were 2 JGs in there, and there but for the grace of God go I. And he thought he was adding the U.S. Trade Representative, Jameson Greer. We all can relate to that. And this is one of the reasons where I don't think necessarily Mike Waltz has to resign. I wouldn't mind if he offered his resignation. I think the president would turn it down. I just this was a big screw up, and it was an embarrassing screw up. And I just prefer if people could just say, yeah, you know what, we really screwed up on this. We're going to do better. And then everybody could move on from this. And instead, the administration is insisting, no, everything went exactly according to plan. And I don't think that's the case. And also, I don't think it makes, the argument about, well, whether these were war plans or attack plans seems like a really Bill Clintonian defense that I don't like to see this administration deploying.
Trump publicly standing behind Waltz and the entire team. Politico with a story with 5 people on the byline suggesting that behind the scenes he was not too happy about it in terms of the embarrassment and other aspects of it. But it seems like everybody's going to keep their job for now.
He has every right to be. Like the other, the degree to which these folks did not serve the president well. And that's, even if like instinctively you want to like Hegseth, you want to like Waltz, you want to like all these great, and by the way, I don't think you can point to one person and say, oh, it's this person's fault and not anybody else's. Like, as far as we know, from what, Goldberg put out today, nobody's like, hey, should we be talking about this on Signal? In fact, it's Hegseth saying, don't worry, our operational security is great. Not so great.
All right, Jim, on to our crazy martini now. It's been a little while since we've had one of our episodes of Now It Can Be Told from the days of the Biden administration. We've had a number of those over the couple of months now since he left office, most of them being, Joe Biden mentally was not all there. And now we have another story. This one actually comes to us from that place we always cite, Jim, the Young Turks, where Cenk Uygur was talking to a guy named Michael LaRosa, who used to work in the office of First Lady Jill Biden. And he's talking about how the press was manipulated to put Biden in the best possible light. And it includes requesting their questions and approving their stories. Take a listen.
Listeners, I'll play the quote in a moment, but I just want to point out I'm sitting in Greg's chair, which means I get to press the button to play the audio. And I just want you to notice how different it's going to sound when I press the button in 3, 2, 1.
There was this thing in Biden world about quote approval. Everything had to be on quote approval. So you talk to a reporter, but like one person decides what the reporter can use, what quotes they can use. There was weird things like that. I mean, you saw them get caught trying to script questions to radio reporters that summer or summer of 2024. It was very reminiscent to me of being on the campaign in 2020, where these young press staffers in these states like New Hampshire or Iowa or Nevada, they were sort of like dog trained to make the questions conditional for interviews. And I said to them, please never ask the journalist for the questions ahead of time. You can always ask about the topics, but do not ask them for the questions for Dr. Biden. And they said, well, that's what, the other side tells us to do for him.
That was 2020. They were doing that, demanding the questions. We've seen the close-up pictures of him holding the cards with the questions and the photos of the reporters at the very few press conferences that he did. So, Jim, it's one thing to ask for topics. That's totally normal. It's another thing to ask for specific questions, which is not usual. And then having right of refusal for what you can actually publish after the fact is insane.
Greg, if you go back to certain, presidential libraries or other, places where they keep official documents, going back for generations, just about every public utterance of the President of the United States is recorded and preserved for the historical record. If you're the President of the United States and you say it in public into a microphone, there are no takebacks. There are no, well, when I said a little incursion, I didn't really mean a little incursion, or all of these different versions. For God's sake, this man cannot remain in power. But I'm not calling for regime change. When the president says it, the president says it. And I was glad to see La Rosa making the distinction between issues and particular questions. Maybe you can say how specific do you want to get into it. Maybe you can get into a blurry area there, but wanting the exact verbiage of the question beforehand is traditionally a no-go. And then once the president says, now, if you want to have a conversation off the record in which that off the record, you don't use any of it. On background, you can quote it or you can basically use that in your thinking or your coverage, but you can't directly quote any of it. You can't attribute it to anyone. It's kind of let that go into your thinking and your understanding of the issue, but do not attribute it to this person. And then there's, when you're president of the United States, you don't really have any of this stuff. You're speaking to somebody, the president of the United States, everything they say is on the record all the time. That comes with the job, comes with the duties. You can't, what I meant to say was, no, you said it the other way. So that's really kind of frightening. And the other thing was how many reporters went along with this? So, we want to get an interview with the president, so we're going to give the president can't look at, I don't like the way I sounded on that one, so don't use that. I don't like how he sounded on that one. No, you said it really what you ought to do is probably be more careful about what you say when there's a microphone in front of you. But obviously at that point, Joe Biden was not capable of that. So, this is really remarkable and fascinating. And, it happens to happen, here in March 2025 after now that Biden has left office. Although, according to NBC News, the Bidens want back in. Now, they said the Bidens. I don't doubt Jill Biden wants back in. To be maybe Hunter, but Joe Biden himself. In addition to, I think we discussed this on the program, Biden. I had said Biden had not made a public appearance in which he made remarks since he left office, and somebody looked up and found he had spoken to the National Student UN Conference in New York City. The sum total of the coverage of that was one Facebook post, which means the Biden staff did not invite anyone to cover it. And the reason they didn't invite anyone to cover it is because they had no idea what was going to come out of his mouth. And it sounded like the event, as far as we could tell from that one Facebook post, the event went fine for him. Great. I also had a reader who said they saw Biden with his Secret Service detail traveling on Amtrak from New York to Wilmington, Delaware, sometime that week. So it might have been coming back from the event. I don't know. But they said didn't talk to anybody, had one staffer with them. They said it was just very weird. And I think this idea that, Biden's fine, we just never see the guy. I don't know if we're ever going to see this guy speaking in public again. I think the next time you visit the Capitol, he'll be staying for a day. I don't think this is, I think Joe Biden's time in the public spotlight has ended. And I think we're just kind of expecting, everyone's supposed to forget that this guy was going to run for 4 more years up until July of last year.
Yeah. I mean, other than the quote approval, there's nothing in this story that we didn't already know. It's just that the mainstream media is now finally admitting.
Now we can tell you. Now we can let you know. Oh, hey,
Admitting that it happened. I think that the fact that Joe Biden is quiet on the train and probably not even in the quiet car, it shows you how diminished he is. Because if he's been known for anything over the last 50 years, it's that he never shuts up. And so that's a telling and a very sad sign. On the flip side, how horrible would the job be for you? Maybe they sit in on the interview, or maybe you go through the transcript afterwards of being the staffer going, ugh, no, can't use that. Ugh. With Biden just going, what are you talking about, Jack? That's not true, fat.
Well, we did see that for the better part of 4 years. And then, folks like you and I, and like not just you and I, not just about everybody in conservative media. Yeah, polling was indicating that like 70 to 80, even more percent of Americans thought Joe Biden was too old to run for another term. And that's why. And we kept being told, no, we're ageist and we're being, we're mean, we're unfair, we're biased. Greg, in fact, I believe someone said that I was contributing to the worst bottom gutter politics, not that I'm bitter. And then, this person who has subsequently on his own podcast said that he totally botched this. No kidding. No kidding. Chris Cillizza. Could have been anybody, but, But just it's infuriating, the phenomenon of we're getting gaslit. This was gaslighting. This was people in the media and in the administration insisting that Joe Biden was fine when we could see it with our own eyes. And then on the debate stage, everything fell apart. He collapsed like a Jenga tower, and it was right there, evident in front of you. So I can't wait for Jake Tapper's book on this. I'm sure it's going to be.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't even know what you're going to be allowed to use, at that point, access to the president doesn't really mean much because, you can get a 20-minute interview and you get like 1 or 2 phrases out of it, which are basically platitudes. So I don't know if that was worth compromising your integrity over, but in the moment, perhaps it looked like a good idea.
You dog-eyed, one-eyed, pony soldiering, pony, My Little Pony rider.
We don't miss him. We do not miss him.
We wish him well as he rides off into the sunset.
Exactly. Great to have you in studio again. Hopefully your internet is back, but this was fun, and we will do it again tomorrow, one way or another. See you then.
Maybe I'll text Jeffrey Goldberg, see if he can get me connected to the internet.
Jim Garrity, National Review. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. Thanks for being with us today. Please be sure to subscribe to the 3 Martini Lunch podcast if you don't already, and invite your friends to do so as well. We'd love to have them listening. Thanks also for your 5-star ratings and your kind reviews. Please keep those coming. Get us on your home devices. All you have to say is play 3 Martini Lunch podcast. Follow us both on X. He's at Jim Garrity. I'm at Dateline_DC. Have a terrific Wednesday, and join us again on Thursday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.